Congress wants more inflation. If they get their way, it could mean a permanent shift to higher inflation forever. A couple weeks ago, Jerome Powell was hauled into Congress to explain why the Fed, which is supposed to fight inflation, instead manufactures inflation for a living. Just kidding. This is Congress. In fact, Jerome Powell was hauled in to explain why the Fed doesn't crank up inflation even more. Or as the gathered Congress things put it, raise the inflation target from 2%, where it's been for decades, up to 3% and beyond, where it can fleece Americans gooder and harder. The background here is that the Fed has effectively maintained a 2% inflation target for roughly 30 years. Progressives high on MMT want a higher target so they can flood easy money to tissue fire the economy and bankrupt the country. Now, if you still believe in Santa Claus, or central banking, it might come as a shock that there's literally no science behind the 2% target. Apparently, some random New Zealand banker made an off-the-cuff remark in 1988, and it spread like wildfire among the easily influenced cartel banker or central bankers of the world. Now, if I had to guess, the true reason for 2% is because central bankers think that's the highest number the public will accept. It's the highest number that mentally feels like you can ignore it. Bump that to 3, and the livestock get bolshy and vote for populists. And that brings us to Powell in Congress. In a recent exchange, Ohio progressive Sherrod Brown pressured Jerome why he doesn't cut rates right now to, quote, prevent workers from losing their jobs. Or as squatty Ayanna Pressley put it, quote, interest rates are too damn high. Powell responded that cutting rates could hike inflation, and he emphasized that the 2% target isn't going anywhere. In fact, he emphasized it 7 different times in the span of 5 minutes, which you only do when you're talking to stupid people. Of course, inflation is nowhere near 2%, and it hasn't been for years. By the friendliest measure CNN can dig up, it's 3.2 year on year, and on an annualized basis, it's closer to 5.5. But the Fed is on record. In fact, 7 times per 5 minutes, that 2% is the holy grail. The exchange illustrates what should be one of the scariest things in Washington right now, the fact that Jerome Powell is actually the hard money guy in D.C. He's under constant pressure to hike his target to 3, 4, and beyond. I had a series of videos last year tracing out what happens if the Fed does hike its target, but in short, it would massively intensify the boom-bust cycle, so bigger tissue fires, bigger collapses, while obviously eroding your dollar that much faster and, for better or worse, accelerating the great paper money Ragnarok that history says is coming. So what's next? Brought to you by Unchained.com. The Fed manufactured the biggest monetary crisis in 40 years, from inflationary boom to recessionary bust, papered over by deficits. It's now facing the political fallout from MMT Congress things whose constituents can see the jobs picture, even if government statisticians cannot. As for what comes next, if the guy who just engineered the worst inflation of 40 years is literally the hard money guy in D.C., we are in trouble. Powell's term is up in 26. Trump has already said he won't reappoint since Powell is, quote, political. On the other hand, a second-term Biden may well give in and replace Powell with a proper inflationist, of which there are many waiting in the wings. If that happens, we could get a money printer that makes $6 trillion Powell look like a pipsqueak. Okay, we'll be watching. See you next time.